Sal, you've probably been sitting on stages like this for a long time, probably longer than that. Well, you're 36, and that's a 25-year lifespan in a business.
Yeah, it's actually 26 years now.
Yeah.
If I figure it out, 1950, and I opened in my first play in 1950 in Chicago around Christmas time. So it's about this time. That,
What'd you do before that?
just nothing. Just hung around the stoop and the Bronx, just being a bum, you know.
When, for instance, when you're doing P.S. Your Cat is Dead, your New York accent is flawless, and then when you and I chat, there's no recognition. Every once in a while, you know, the New York will sneak in, I'm sure. But does that just work out from the theater? Did that work out through voice teachers, through drama?
Yeah, because in the beginning, I couldn't say, I mean, when I was a little kid, I used to really say D's, dems, and does. I mean, I really did, and I had to go to school and learn how to get rid of all that. And that's why I laugh sometimes when I think of it. Some of the best roles that I've had to use D's, dems, and does. Because after all those lessons, you know, I'm back again talking like a street kid.
What would you do if
These, dems, and those? Because after all those lessons, you know, I'm back again talking like a street kid.
What would you do with a child of yours if they showed theatrical promise or talent? Do you think would you let them experience that professional career as early as you did?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I mean, if my son or daughter were as interested in the theater as I was at that age, I'd go even further. I would expose them to even much more than I was as a kid.
It had to be a dramatic move for your father and mother to allow you that trip to Chicago and to say, this is it, he's on the road, he's gone.
It was a marvelous thing. It really was the turning point of my life when they did take me down to the train station. I'll never forget it, Grand Central Station. The whole family was there. And I was about to get on the train by myself. And my father said, pulled me aside, and he said, now look, if you want to split, you can right now. He said, but if you get on that train, from that moment on, your entire life is going to change. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. And I said, no, I really want to go. I want to go. He said, okay. And I went, and he was absolutely right. From that moment on, a totally different life from my brothers, from anybody that I know.
Well, you can't say then if you started at 11 that by the time Rebel Without a Cause occurred that you were skyrocketing. That's a nice steady progress in the theater as far as popular acceptance goes.
Oh, yeah.
What happened then as a teenager who all of a sudden has this national stature?
I never had acne.
Are they careful about that? That must be catastrophic when I think about some of the things I went through.
I just never did. I mean, I was an abnormal teenager, I think, because I didn't go through any of the things that most teenagers go through. I started shaving at a very early age. I started smoking at a very early age. Did all the things very young, and it was because a lot of my friends were older. You know.
I would imagine. How about the star-like things that occur? The accumulation of the money, the national attention. As a matter of fact, I happen to have here in my possession one of the Hollywood Rebels.
Yes.
This is circa 1955. And people that we all still remember because they're all predominant in the movie scene, from Elvis Presley through to Natalie Wood. One tragic acceptance, and that was the genius of James Dean. Rebel Without a Cause, Exodus, Dino, of all the films, how about the fun ones?
Well, Rebel was the most fun. I mean, that was like, that was the epitome of a kid's fantasy of what it would be like to make a movie. I couldn't wait to get to the studio, working with Jimmy and working with Natalie. And, I mean, it was like one big party. It was fun. It wasn't at all like a job, you know. And I've never experienced it like that since. You know.
Was it frightening for you coming off of a stage career as a child, and then all of a sudden getting into the movies? Now, Rebel wasn't the first film, was it?
No, that was the third.
The third.
But the first two films had very small parts in it.
Yeah. And do you have, or are you worried at all about getting stereotyped to the point where you're now limited in this vast field of cinema?
Well, you know, there's stereotype and there's stereotype. I like playing the villain. I like playing the bad guy. I like those roles because they're always so much meatier. I mean, I really wouldn't like to play the boy next door unless it's the boy next door in out of Mongolia or something. You know what I'm saying? That's just not my bag. I'm not into that. So I don't mind being stereotyped as long as the roles are good. Like Vito in P.S. Your Cat is Dead. That's a great role. It's a fabulous role.
And you bring to a great interpretation.
Well, thank you.
The New York accent. That's amazing to me, and it's a loved accent. It's amazing when you travel the country. Even today, what do people most comment about your theatrical background or experiences? What is the most popular comment made to you? I remember you from Rebel Without a Cause. Hey, it was great in Exodus or the theater.
Yeah, I think Rebel is the most talked about thing, and strangely enough, a younger generation now is getting very into the Rebel cult, the James Dean cult. So, like, for instance, if somebody is 20 years old and they start rapping to me about James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause and that whole 50s period, I forget that they weren't even born.
That's right.
You see?
That's right.
But it seems to be like they're going back to the source, and going back to the 50s really is the source for rock, for teens, idols, for rock stars, for the youth movement.
What was the fan reaction or the adult reaction to you personally when Rebel came out? Do you remember it being a hostile one?
Oh, I remember when it came out. It was incredible because it was so big that I just didn't know what to make of it. Again, it was a fantasy. See, I fantasized all of this, so I can't say it was like a big shock to me. I really did imagine it all as a kid, so it was like I expected it.
Did they have any idea in the production that it was going to be the movie it became?
No. Jack Warner did, but we didn't, because originally we started filming Rebel in black and white, and about 4 days later he came in and said, shoot everything over in color.
Yeah. Who among the stars and who among the actors and actresses that, let's see, Paul Newman, somebody up there likes me, James Dean, who are some that you just totally admire, contemporary artists that you work with?
There's so many. Max von Sydow, Carl Malden, Edward G. Robinson.
A whole lot.
I love them. Yeah, they're fabulous.
We're going to continue that list right after this word.
Lassie.
When we left you, Sal was listing a variety of artists that he's enjoyed, and so far that list has now come to an end, but it's a huge grouping of people. You've had an opportunity to work, we've talked about the actors and actresses in your career. How about directors?
Well, those are the people I really did idolize ever since I was a kid. That's the thing I really wanted to be, was a director.
Is that still?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the ultimate. I don't know what happens after that, but I would love to direct a film. I've directed a play, I've directed an opera, but I want to direct a movie.
I'm going to represent the most naive of people, and myself too, and say, why can't a Sal Mineo direct a film if he wants to?
It's a little more complicated than that. The films that I've been offered to direct, I don't want to direct. Mm-hmm. The films that I would like to direct have not been offered to me. So it comes down to I have to do it myself, and this is what I'm working on now. I'm working with a producer. I bought the rights to a novel. It's being developed now into screenplay, and hopefully within the next 6 months we'll get it going, and I will finally direct something that I want to direct.
Well, you've directed stage productions before.
Right.
In fact, and I want to talk to you in a couple of minutes about opera too. But how about, now, is that a good reference to movie direction, or is it just a totally different field?
I think it is. I mean, I think actors have a tendency to make good stage directors. Good stage directors have a tendency to become good film directors. I mean, people like Sidney Lumet and Frankenheimer and Daniel Mann, people like that, have directed stage and know about actors and all of that. So I think it's all together, but it means nothing in the industry. It's so hard to explain. No, things get done in the strangest ways. People get to direct films by bizarre happenstances. It's just so incredible. There's no formula. You know.
Who in your
Formula, you know.
Who in your background would you say best was able to pull a role out of you or to direct you in a particular drama?
See, they've really been a couple of very fine directors that I've worked with, and it's hard to single them out. But for instance, Sidney Lumet, I worked with Lumet on television during the live television days. Sidney Lumet, for instance, just directed Dog Day Afternoon, so give an idea of who we're talking about. And he used to work on live television. Nicholas Ray, who directed Rebel, was able to pull performances from everybody, but with a different way. I mean, he worked differently with Jimmy Dean than he did with Natalie Wood or with myself. He psyched everybody out, which was marvelous, and it made everybody feel like they were doing it on their own, which I think is marvelous to do.
Well, now tell me about opera. You're an opera buff. You have produced and directed an opera.
I just directed an opera. Yeah.
Well, how did this all start? Are you a singer?
No. I mean, I used to sing badly, and made a couple of records, but I never wanted to be a singer. I just love listening to good singers. But it was really a kind of a way to communicate with my grandfather, who was a fabulous opera buff, and he couldn't speak English. So what he used to do, like on Saturdays, he'd have all of his kids, his grandchildren over, sit on his lap, and he'd play the opera on the radio, and he would sing the arias and try and teach them to the kids. And that was the way we communicated. So I've just loved them ever since.
It would be, I have seen 2 operas and have been thoroughly enchanted by the experience. I suppose the work, first of all, that required talent, and then what
Incredible.
looks to be just years and years of developing. And they eat good. I mean,
And they get paid well, too. It's incredible.
What about your records? Is it just something you hide away?
Awful. Absolutely awful.
We talked a little bit off camera about acting exercises. To me, what would seem to be the most difficult part of acting is to just at command pull out from your repertoire of emotions a particular emotion geared to a scene. Do you let the power of the scene take over, or is it that automatism that's in a person?
I don't know. It's funny with me. It's never really automatic. I mean, if I have to laugh at something, I don't say, well, now I'm going to think of something funny. I really do find a lot of times I get lost, and I'm just sort of wandering, like on stage here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I say, wow, I went through that scene already, and I didn't even realize I did it. So that's why I don't know what training really does for actors, what studying does for actors. I'm an advocate of doing.
Just getting
Just
out
doing
and
it.
doing.
That's all. I mean, I don't know any other way. I don't know if reading about it is going to help or anything like that. But just the actual doing of it does.
What was one of the most satisfying roles for you? Stage, television, movies.
Well, for stage, I've played a lot of strange roles, but the role that I've wanted to do for so long, I'm doing now. I wanted to play this role for 2 years, and I'm finally getting a chance to do it. And the film, I guess, the one that I really had a great time with was playing Gene Krupa.
Oh, I'll bet that would be
Because
fun.
I absolutely idolized him since I was a kid. And when I finally got to meet him, not only meet him, but he gave me a set of drums and he taught me how to play the drums. It was like, wow, you see dreams come true. It's true.
Yeah. Not what is left out, but what character or in history would you like to portray?
Napoleon.
That's it?
Yeah,
You
I'm
gotta-
obsessed with him. Yeah. And, you know, it's strange. As a kid, before I knew who Napoleon was, I used to save photographs of him.
Mhm.
And I used to save books on him. And I had no idea really who Napoleon was. and there was a fixation for him, which I still have. I collect paintings of Napoleon, sculpture, books, I mean, anything that I can find, even brandy, you know. But I really, there's an affinity for him, and I always thought that maybe I was his son in a previous life, L'Aiglon, you know, who was a very tragic figure. Yeah.
It's amazing. In keeping with that, would you ever want to tie that whole thing? And do you think that you could direct yourself acting?
I have, but I don't like doing it. I mean, I've directed myself on stage, and I think one suffers. I think the performance suffers somewhat, and the direction suffers, because I am not the best. Well, it's so hard to be objective of your own work. Mm-hmm. And no, I wouldn't want to do that.
I'm looking forward to that movie that comes out, and the credit says directed by Sal Mineo.
Oh, I can't wait.
We're going to be back. Would you call yourself a scheduled person, or can you be scheduled in this crazy business?
Oh, I've tried. I've tried, because I always thought that that's something that one must learn to do, and that's live by some kind of schedule. It doesn't work. Probably the closest I get to it is that I like to work at night, and that's about the only kind of organized thing that I have. When I say night, I mean like from 1 in the morning until about 4 in the morning.
Well, you know, one of the real advantages to scheduling, of course, is then the result is the leisure time. What about your leisure time? What is it?
I don't know. I never really think in terms of when I'm working and when I'm not working. I mean, like specifically, and that's when you go to the theater, that's a working hour. But when I walk the streets, it's like working. I mean, observing people and all of that. I don't really know how to differentiate, you know.
Do you see for instance, in your leisure time when you read, when you see movies, are you always all of a sudden putting that producer director part of your mind to work, thinking, oh, that would make a great property, or can you just really settle back and enjoy something for just the sake of it?
It's always related somehow to either a film or a play or a project. I mean, if I go to a film and I forget about looking for camera moves and looking for things like that, then it's really a fabulous film, because it takes that kind of thing to make me forget.
Has a film done that to you?
Oh, some of them have.
For instance,
Clockwork Orange. Anything Stanley Kubrick has done.
You like Stanley Kubrick?
Yeah, fabulous. It's that kind of thing where I have to go back to see his films again to look at it technically, because each time I see it, I keep forgetting, and I fall right into it and become just a, not even an observer, become a part of it. And that's
He's alarming, because I can remember with Clockwork Orange, everybody discussing the end of that movie. What does he mean by all of that? Did you ever figure out a meaning for yourself? He basically said there was nothing to it. The crazy, hazy child born in space.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
No, excuse me.
That was in 2001.
2001. I'm off on a film. Clockwork Orange, the violence, and
yeah, the thing I loved about that, and it is a dangerous film, because I see a lot of people coming out of it with connotations that I think could be very dangerous, and that's probably part of the brilliance of the film, is that it could go both ways. But I always felt that what he was saying was that man has a natural instinct, and that's violence, and if you take it away from him through clinical or scientific or with scientific methods, it's unnatural. And as a result, because it's unnatural, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be right.
Through a lot of your roles, and then on into directing with A Fortune in Men's Eyes, I know you're I don't know if actively involved, but have a lot of thoughts on prison reform. And I'd really be curious to hear about them.
Well, I got very involved in it because I was involved in a project that dealt with it, and but it's hopeless. It really is. You could talk about it. I've talked about it for years. I've warned people about specific prisons that they were going to erupt. I remember I did that on the Dick Cavett show. I went on one night and I said, the tombs in New York will erupt within the next few weeks. And he got very uptight with me and said, you're not supposed to do that on television. I said, well, that's what I'm saying. And it did. It erupted. People were killed and all that. People don't care. You know, I'm generalizing, but generally people really couldn't care less about people in prison because they did a crime and they're being put away. And, you know, let's talk about other things. Let's talk about cancer research. Let's talk about all those other things, but not prisons. It's the way it is.
But are they receptive to you?
Incredibly so, yeah. They say, come in, see everything. We need money. And they'll tell you right up front, we're not rehabilitating these people. We're just keeping them here because that's all we can do. We don't have the funds to rehabilitate these people.
It's so interesting because I'm startled by your comment of saying that it's absolutely hopeless, because it seems that, to my knowledge, there would be somebody somewhere or some group of people who seem to be involved in some kind of active rechanging or
Oh, there are
changing.
people, you know, there are people who really do care. But I mean, honestly, if I say to you, listen, you've got $100, right, and you want to give that $100 to a cause, are you really going to give it to prison reform? Too many people, and rightfully so, I guess, in their own hearts, their money should go towards, you know, other needy cases. The government should be doing it, I think.
Sal, do you believe that a theater production that deals with subjects like that can affect some kind of change?
Oh, yeah. I think this is, again, where I think the government is losing out on not financing and subsidizing the arts, because the arts have proven to have been the tools to knock down all those barriers between the countries.
Do you have a favorite sport?
Yeah.
Good. Will you come back so
It's
we can spend about 5 hours and talk about it?
I'd love it.
This has been an absolute
Thank you,
delight.
Michael.
Thank you for joining me. And we'll see you again next week.